Hello, welcome to Politics. And I think we've just got one or two more people joining us. It's just turned 5 o'clock. You've joined us here in 258, which is our room where we do all of our politics teaching. And as I say, I'll just introduce myself and everything in about 30 seconds time when we've got a couple more people joining us. Thanks for coming along in a slightly different open evening setting than we're used to giving as well. Okay, good stuff. So we'll start, and I should introduce myself. My name's Tony Dabb, and I'm the course leader in politics here at QE. And I've been here for about 5 years, but as you might notice, I've been teaching for a lot longer than that as well. And what we've been doing here in politics is looking at all sorts of up-to-the-minute developments. So literally this morning, we've been talking about the American elections in 2020, getting quite excited about what happens on November the 3rd, assuming that we get some sort of result. And we've been thinking about COVID and lockdown and the conflict that takes place between Manchester and London and similar things as well. So the aim today, I guess, is to try and show you a little bit about what we do in politics, but mainly, and this is something I'd really encourage, for you to ask as many questions as you like, because whilst we don't get a kind of proper face-to-face thing where you'd be in here and having a look at the room and talking to students, at least hopefully I'll be able to answer any queries you've got. Maybe you can just find out a little bit more about us as well. You know, we really do appreciate that this is a novel subject. So lots and lots of people have never done politics, certainly not a chance to do anything in politics in school. And so often people are coming thinking, well, what exactly do you do? And hopefully we'll fill that in as well. And I've got a question which will neatly lead us on to that as well. I should say for everybody else, just in case you haven't used one of these Zoom things before, that along the bottom toolbar, there's a Q&A button, and you can click on that button and ask any questions that you like, and they'll appear to me, and I'll try and deal with them as quickly as possible and as much as possible. And if I don't quite cover something, please ask it again, or ask me to repeat the question, or ask me to repeat the answer as well. Okay, so we've got a question anyway, which is what I was going to start with, which is what topics do we study if we choose politics? And I can't show you, unfortunately, because there's a slight technical hitch, but we've got a politics Google site, which you'll find through the QE website, and that's got a full list of those. But the neat summary of it is this. In the first year, we're looking mainly at UK politics. In the second year, we're looking mainly at US politics, about American politics, and we make a comparison between those two. So a prime minister is more powerful than presidents. Does Parliament have more power than Congress? Do American pressure groups have more influence than UK pressure groups? Why their democracy is different? In the middle of that, we also do a lot of 4 topics about 4 different political ideas. So we look at the ones of the 3 big main parties. So conservatism, socialism, liberalism. We also look at feminism, and we find that that's one of the ones where we get lots and lots of our really big discussions in as well, and lots of argument and debate that takes place in the classroom. On that in that first year, what we're thinking about is people and politics, because one of the things that people sometimes think is, well, politics must just be about, I don't know, Boris Johnson waving pieces of paper at the dispatch box in Parliament. That's a little bit of it, but actually what we're really interested in is how do people make politicians do things? So we look at voting behavior and try and understand that, for example, why did the 2019 election end up in the way in which it did with the result that it did? And we look at things like direct democracy. So we had a Brexit referendum, and that was something which made politicians behave in ways which lots of them really didn't want to do. We look at pressure groups. We're doing that right now as well. And we've been thinking about, for example, Extinction Rebellion and the extent to which Extinction Rebellion might be something which is a threat to democracy and anti-democratic and potentially unlawful, or whether in some ways some people might think that it's encouraging more people to get involved in politics and raising awareness as well. In that second year, where we've been talking about American politics, obviously we're looking at the American election right now, and we're doing that for both first and second years. And if I remember, I'll tell you about a little competition that you can find on our Google site as well. So first question, I hope that's all right and it's made sense to you. Second question that we've got here as well. Do we do things like debate tactics and strategies, straw man and ad hominem attacks? Do you know what's really funny? Because we were literally doing this at the beginning of this week, where we've been talking about votes at 16 and whether we think we should extend the franchise. That is to say, the number of people who can vote in this country. Almost everybody who's over 18 can vote, but quite a lot of political parties, Labour, the Liberal Democrats, Green Party, SNP, want 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. And we were looking at two arguments that appeared on a video, and one person's argument wasn't very good, and students recognized straight away that this was an attack on the person rather than about the nature of the content they were arguing about, to an ad hominem attack, as somebody's described here. So we do a little bit of that. We have lots of debates and arguments, though I think the kind of necessarily the rules and kind of techniques of debates are something we spend less time thinking about rather than the content of ideas. We're really interested in the ways in which we can test why we think something is a strong argument and how we might evaluate it. And that eventually feeds into our writing as well. But while we're thinking about debating, we do also run a debating society. It's having a slight hiatus at the moment, given the current circumstances. But in normal circumstances, this room is full of 40 or 50 people debating like mad about all sorts of topics, which they choose as well. So our debating society is student-led, and students run the topics for the next few weeks. They pick the speakers. They often volunteer to do the speaking. And we think as well about different ways in which we can make them better debaters and do a little bit of training for them as well. Hopefully that has answered those questions too. I've run through the topics a little bit there. There's another question that's come up here, which is about the way in which it's assessed. Because we do lots of thinking and talking about things, but ultimately the way in which you're going to get a grade, which is hopefully then going to send you off to university or the thing that you want to do, is through the way in which the course is assessed. The entire course is based on exams. So there's no coursework. And depending upon how you feel about that, that's a good thing or something to think about. So we have 3 2-hour exams at the end of the 2 years. We have 3 components, and they're broadly speaking along the lines of the topics I mentioned before. So component 1 is about UK politics and also a bit of political ideas. Component 2 is about UK government and a little bit of political ideas. Component 3 is about American politics. And within those exams, we're doing mainly essay questions, and the essay questions are typically either 30-minute or 45-minute essays. And there's equal weighting for all 3 of the exams as well, which means that if you have a bit of a kind of, if you found a question that you found tough on one paper, that's okay, because you can easily make up the marks on the other 2 papers as well. So it's not a kind of all or nothing affair when it comes to it. Okay. So we've had something on topics, we've had something on some of the nature of things that we do while we're in our lessons as well. Are there any other questions on it that you want us to answer while we're thinking about it? Okay, we've got one which is about trips and about visits and about, I guess we could include in that, what kind of trips do we offer in politics? And that might be because if you've seen our Google site, you'll know that we annually, in normal circumstances, run a trip to Washington, DC. And it's one of our kind of best things that students tell us about. If you look at the kind of things that students say on the Google site about what they enjoy doing about politics, then the trip to DC is a highlight for them. Clearly this year, that's more difficult with the current circumstances, but as soon as that's going to be possible, and it normally runs in the 2nd year. So if we hope very much that things will get back to normal, at some point early next year, then we would hope to be in a position to run this for your second year. It's an amazing experience because we're going to Washington and we run the trip ourselves, and it's based on the contacts that we've made there. So we go and speak to people involved in pressure groups, for example. So we talk to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And last year we were there with Hillary Shelton, who's the director of the Washington Bureau of the NAACP. And he's somebody who, when Obama was president, was in the White House on a monthly basis, talking regularly. And he gives us his time to talk about how that organization works in America and what the challenges are for an organization that's campaigning for African American rights and advancement in America at the moment as well. And we talk to people about, we go to the National Abortion Federation and talk to them about the kind of really challenging circumstances that they find themselves in. And we go to a pro-democracy group as well called Common Cause. And we see lots and lots of sites around there as well. And so if you haven't seen that on the Politics Google site yet, then I'd really encourage you to look at the video for what students say about the course, but also for some more information about how we do that. We also go to London every year, and I hope very much this year we'll be able to do that, and that by March, Parliament will be open again, and we'll be able to make a visit with our local MP, where we tour the Commons and the Lords, and we speak to the MP, we'll get a chance to grill them for an hour or so, and do some really interesting workshops with the Parliamentary Education Service as well. Good stuff. Okay, I hope that's all right on trips. I'm going to carry on with the other questions that are coming in now. Really good. We've got quite a few really good questions in. So I've got one which comes from Joe, which is, what is the pass rate for politics at QE? I'm delighted to say, Joe, that it's 100%. And 3 years running, we've had 100% pass rate. And obviously this year's results are based on our centre assessed grades, and therefore, you know, you'd expect me to say that they met our expectations, and lots of our students were really happy with that as well. But we're consistently above national averages across all ranges. So last year we had 8 students get A stars, 75% of students get A star to B, you know, that which would count as high grades. So we think we're really good at getting students the grades which they need to get into the university places, normally the university places they want, or similar sorts of courses too. And I hope that applies to everybody. Well, I think that applies to everybody. So it's not just about getting people into Oxford or Cambridge, although we're quite good at doing that too. But we often think about this being an A-level which anybody can come to. And I'm trying to answer another question here, which comes from Keith, which is about GCSE grade requirements. We have, as much as is possible, and more or less open door policy, where as long as you've got a grade 4 in maths and English is the important one for us in terms of writing, then you can do politics, and we can make the subject accessible for you so that you'll end up with an A-level grade, which at least meets your target and very often exceeds your target as well. So I hope that makes sense there, and that reassures you about that as well. And I've got another one, which is there a certain grade you need to achieve at GCSE to be able to study politics? And as I say, only a 4 at English. English language is going to be the most important one for us. But if you've got 4s in English and maths, then you'll be able to get access to our course as well. Yeah, Molly's got a question here as well, which is a good one, which is how large are the classes? The room behind me is our main politics teaching room, and this year every student who's doing politics is learning in this room. In normal times, it's not quite set up like this because we really like to work in groups of 4. At the moment, we're working in pairs, which means we can still talk to each other and still do things. So the classes range between 24 is our maximum. We don't have any classes which are greater than that. Somewhere between 20 and 24. We've got 1 or 2 classes in the second year, which have got 17 and 18 in them as well. So big enough for us to have a discussion, big enough for us to work in small groups with each other as well, but not so big that we can't have a chance to kind of talk to each other and have some sort of, have everybody have an opportunity to get some attention, and also to be able to contribute to whatever discussion we're having as well. Okay, I hope that one makes sense there as well. There was another question there, which I think has gone. I might have answered it by accident. Oh, it comes back to this one about, will there be opportunities to debate and discuss? And I suppose that's really about what kinds of activities that we end up doing in the classroom. This is very much about talking, and it's about you talking as well. And so despite whatever kind of impression we have to give with this virtual thing, I think it's a really good lesson if you've all spent more time talking than I have. And my colleague Dom works in the same way as well. So often what we'll do is we'll introduce a kind of a contentious debate or a topic, or in any topic we're doing, we'll find some way in which we can agree and disagree about it. We may ask you to go and find out a little bit more information about it digitally or virtually, or using some other resources which we give you. We might sometimes ask you to argue about things which you wouldn't necessarily have chosen to support, but which you've got to try and find the strengths for as well. And in most lessons, we'll have an opportunity to spend a portion of it testing each other's arguments, contradicting each other, and hopefully coming to some sort of conclusions where we can step out of character and have a vote on things as well. I hope that one's all right for that one. I've got a question from Katie, which says, which other subjects would be good to take with politics? It's a really good question. I don't think I would ever say that there's some subjects you shouldn't take with politics. And indeed, we have lots of students who've taken pretty much everything. So we have students who sometimes do science and sometimes do maths. We've got students who do creative subjects like art and media and photography. We've got students who do business and students who do sciences. Well, I've mentioned sciences already, geography and that kind of thing as well. I think there are lots of our students who find that they're interested in human beings and they're interested in the changing world, and that lends itself to history. So we have lots of politics and history students. We have lots of politics and sociology students as well. We have lots of politics and English students, and I think we're often using lots of the same skills there as well. So partly because of the way we're examined, but partly because after we've done lots of discussion about things, then we're trying to put that into some form, usually an essay form, which is like an argument. Those kind of things fit nicely in there. So I hope that makes sense. It can be, there are no exclusions. You can do anything, any other subjects you want to, but we often find that when people are thinking about the university course that they might be doing later on, they're often moving in that direction towards politics or history or English or something similar. Okay, Katie, I hope that's all right. Good stuff. I've got another one, which is another great question. How many hours a week would we have? So typically, what you're going to end up doing is 3 A-level subjects in QE, and your full timetable, therefore, commits you to 15 hours of contact time for your A-level subjects, and some extra time that's also added on for things like meeting with your progress tutor, which is, I suppose, is a bit like form time. So for politics, 5 hours a week is what we do in the classroom. Currently in the first year, that 5 hours is split with 2.5 hours with me and 2.5 hours with Dom. At the moment in the second year, I'm teaching all the second years, and probably will be as well for the foreseeable future. So 5 hours a week for lesson time. What we normally say is we're normally thinking about doing another 4 hours or so on top of that at home. So that would include our homework or our preparation for things as well. That might not always be every week. And sometimes if we're leading up to a written assessment, you know, you might want to do a little bit more than that in order to prepare, but that's about the balance of things. Lessons typically are either an hour or 90 minutes, depending upon where they fall in our timetable block. The 90-minute ones, we often kind of split up into 2 halves or 3 chunks, just to give us a little bit of variety as well. I hope that's all right with that question. Okay. I've got another question, which is, will class sizes change at all between first and second year? Yeah, typically just 1 or 2 people make choices to do different things. And so we might find that second year classes, I think currently the second year classes are 18, 19, 20, rather than 21, 22, 23. And I guess that just reflects the fact that, you know, at different times when people take courses, you know, sometimes people find that there's something else for them to do, or they've changed their mind about QE or whatever it happens to be as well. Okay, I've got a really good question here. I haven't got a name with it, but it is, what types of degrees and careers can you go into after studying politics? We don't have that many students who come along and say, well, I'm coming to do this because I want to be Prime Minister or I want to be an MP, although I have had some. So we have lots of people who, and I'm pleased to say this is really encouraging, I think, about the subject. They come and take our subject sometimes and they think, well, I haven't done this before, but I'm quite interested. I'm going to try it. I've got an idea about what I want to do at university. And then having studied with us for a while, they think, actually, now the thing I'm going to do is politics. So quite a lot of people come and do politics and then end up going off to do a politics degree because they didn't realize how much they liked it. If you do a politics degree, and I'm just thinking here about the usefulness of politics in general, it's a really well-respected academic degree in the same way that history is, or in the same way that English is as well. And because it involves lots and lots of the same skills, then it's quite convertible. So someone who's done a politics degree will be seen as someone by an employer who might have all the skills that you might need for example, journalism, So we've had quite a lot of people who've gone off to do politics and journalism, or gone off to do politics with a view to doing journalism later. To do things like law. I should have mentioned this before when we talked about subjects that people often do together. We have lots and lots of students who do politics and law together. And when we look at kind of, you know, people who would become politicians, often they did law as a degree, and often they did politics as an A-level or politics as part of their first degree course before they qualified for barristers as well. We've got people who work in things like think tanks. And so some of our students have gone on to go and do a politics degree or politics and history or something similar. And then they've gone off to work for an organization like, most prominent one I'm thinking of is the Institute for Public Policy Research. And then they've basically ended up writing policy papers, which then are adopted by usually the Labour Party as policy, as things that actually change the world as well. We've got quite a few people who've gone off to do courses in politics. I've got two at the moment, one at Warwick, who's working with the Coventry MP, and another one who's at Hull, who's doing a politics and legislative affairs degree. And he's currently working in Parliament right now as well, shadowing an MP and moving. I think they're working on 2 placements with 2 or 3 different MPs as well. So if you want to do politics with a big P, you can do that. But if you want to just do an interesting course, which has got some like convertible skills, and you're thinking of doing something like journalism or something like staying in education as well, then you can do that too. I hope that's enough. I hope that covers the things that we're talking about. In terms of destinations, we had lots of students who've gone, well, mainly to the universities that they chose to go to, which is kind of the most heartening thing as well. So they got the grades that they needed to get into those universities. And universities all over the place. So in common with lots of places in the Northeast, lots of students have gone to Newcastle and Northumbria, but we've had plenty of students who go to Oxford and Cambridge. So one of our politics students got into Brasenose this year and popped in last week just to tell us about how excited she is for the activities that she's got lined up, even in the current circumstances as well. Hull, I've mentioned before, is often a big destination. Leeds as well. And some London universities, Queen Mary's and King's College too. Okay, good stuff. One of the things that some people have asked about is, if you came into this subject and you didn't feel like you knew very much about it, what kinds of things would you do to find out a little bit more about it? One of the things that we've been talking about in our groups in here is podcasts. And we're massive fans of big podcasts because they're a great way of learning while you're doing something else often as well. And sometimes, you know, reading things takes a bit of attention and a bit of kind of a focus that you want to be doing something else while you're doing it. So we're big fans at the moment of, because it's America and American politics, of NPR's politics podcast. That's National Public Radio in America. And what you get from them is a little 15-minute daily podcast, which is brilliant for kind of picking up little details about things, especially right now, about things that are happening in the American elections. There are other ones, Talking Politics, for example. You can find that on Spotify as well. And that's a kind of more slightly longer episodes where you're getting in some really deep ideas about big political thinkers or about developments that are happening right now. And it's run by a guy called David Runciman. And we often look at his writing and his ideas about things as well. And there's things like, there's one by former Labour leader Ed Miliband called Reasons to be Cheerful, which of course in itself is something to celebrate, but he takes a little topic every week and unpacks it in 20 or 30 minutes. Just for looking at news, we often think something like The Guardian's Today in Focus is a really good one, because it takes an issue which could be Black Lives Matter, or it could be something to do with Extinction Rebellion, or this week they've all been about the American elections. And they're allowing you to kind of like find and learn things without having to do lots of hard work to them, really, just kind of absorbing the material. Okay, I pause for a moment there in case there's anything that I've missed or any questions that I haven't properly answered, or if anybody wants me to cover anything else in particular. Okay, so one other thing that I thought you might want to consider while you're thinking about your choices and things as well is what students have said about us. And I've mentioned this before on the Google site, but we've got a couple of really nice videos. One that's made by current students in our second year now, who are talking about the experience of what QE is like. Also one that was made by students, or made with me by students from last year as well, which we made over the lockdown. And I think they're quite nice because one of the things they're very generous about talking about is you get a lot of support at QE. And so, and in particular, politics in particular, hopefully you will think, yes, okay, where I've been, where I needed a bit of help with a one-to-one support, for example, we're super open to the idea that you can come and chat with us in your free, or catch up with us at lunchtime, and we'll spend 20 minutes with you here and there to help you understand a topic, or to think about how you might approach an essay question or something similar. And likewise, when it comes to people kind of like keeping in touch with us via email and that kind of thing as well, you know, we really want students to think that they're being looked after, and that we've got a dialogue with you about kind of your progress and what you think you need to do to help you kind of get on with things too. I've got a great question from Seth, which is, how similar are courses for law and politics? And there are some nice, I guess the word is synergies, Seth. You know, there are some nice ways in which some of the things you can learn in politics, because they're quite similar, can help you reinforce what you need to know about both subjects. So law obviously covers a part where they're thinking about how a law is made, and they're thinking about how Parliament makes law, therefore, and we do that too. And so I think it's similar in as much as we both look at the mechanics of how you go from a minister coming up with an idea to getting it passed through the Commons and then through the Lords, and then for it to becoming an act of Parliament. But even though we've looked at it similarly, we'll look at it from different angles. Law, I guess, will be then thinking about what happens to the law afterwards and how is it interpreted. And we'll be thinking about, well, how did it get to be that law in the first place? We'll be thinking about the political pressures that pushed a party to decide to do one policy rather than something else. We've got some other aspects about law and politics which make them kind of quite useful partners as well. So we both talk about rights a lot and how we've got those rights and the extent to which we can keep those rights as well. So right now, next week, after half term rather, we'll be looking at, as one of our features of democracy in the UK, how do we protect rights and liberties in the UK? And you may know that we've got something called the Human Rights Act. And because of the system we have, which is called parliamentary sovereignty, we're thinking about how safe and secure is that act? And in the Conservative Manifesto in 2019, on page 48 of it, it says, well, we think we're going to replace the Human Rights Act and put something else in its place. And so for both politics and law, we're thinking about the implications of that. Oh, okay, well, you know, how would you decide which rights were included in that? And what will the political process be for that as well? Okay. I guess, though, apart from that, Seth, there are quite a lot of ways in which they're different. They don't do anything about American law, for example, or American politics or anything. And I guess there's some discrete elements to do with things like political ideas that we consider as well. Okay. So we covered quite a few questions there. And I guess we're coming up to about 28 minutes past 5. And I think what that means is that shortly I'll be told, oh, we've got to kind of start wrapping this session up. But I wonder whether there are any last questions that people want to ask before we say farewell for now. Okay, and there might not be, and that's absolutely fine as well. And hopefully I've kind of managed to answer the things that you wanted to ask as well. What I would say is 2 things before you go. One, please do have a look at the Google site for us, not least because I knew I had to remember something, which is that there's a competition on there for you. So we're asking people who visit the website and people who are thinking about doing politics, and maybe if you're not thinking about doing politics, have a go at predicting the results for the 2020 election in November. It's only a few days away now for the presidential election. Will it be Joe Biden or will it be Donald Trump? And what I've put on there is it's an interactive map. So you can choose how Joe Biden or Donald Trump will get the 270 electoral college votes they need in order to win the presidency. And all of our first and second years are having a go at that one as well. But you can have a go too. And if you get the right answer in terms of the number of votes they get, then you'll be able to win a prize. But while you're there, have a look at the Google site as well. And hopefully that will give you some other clues about the sorts of things that we're covering. In the meantime, if there's anything else that you want to ask and that occurs to you afterwards, or if you've been looking at another subject and then you want to ask another question about it, please do get in touch. My email is tdab@g.qelis.ac.uk. And I think you'll be able to get the details from that from the Politics Google site as well. And I'm pretty sure it's available on the leaflets that we produce, which there are virtual versions of as well. And so, yeah, don't hesitate to get in touch if you've got a particular question about the course. And so I think that will mean that we've pretty much come to the time that we've got. Okay. So thanks very much for coming. Thanks very much for asking such great questions. Hopefully you'll have found out, okay, that's really kind. Thanks very much. Hopefully you'll have found out what you need to do. And as I say, I'll be happy to respond to anything else that you want me to say in the future.